Morning, everyone. It is 9 o'clock, so we will go ahead and call to order the Tech Plat review meeting here on June 29th, 2022. This meeting is being held both virtually and in person in room 326 in City Hall. My name is Jessie Masters. I'm the Development Review Manager here with the city. And first item up on old business, we have a few items of old business today, is preliminary plat PPL 2022-04. This is a preliminary plat submitted by Jorgensen and Associates for property located southwest of West Persimmon and North Reval Road. The property is zoned CS Community Services and RA Residential Agricultural and contains 15.29 acres. A request for a preliminary plat of 55 residential lots. Do we have an applicant present on this item today? We have Justin Jorgensen raised your hand and then you went away. Are you still with us, Mr. Jorgensen? There we are. All right, if you could just state your name for the record, please.
Sure, Justin Jorgensen, Jorgensen Associates.
Great, thank you. Give me just one moment to get this one pulled up. I had a slight issue with my Outlook, so it took me a moment here. Get this. One moment, please. I apologize.
No problem.
Go. All right, so planning staff did not have any major comments on this one. We've seen this one a few times, so it shouldn't be anything too new or surprising for you by this point. Just the big one that we just wanted to, again, just keep on your attention was there will be an expectation, or staff will be recommending anyway, that the construction of this trail, as far as the street improvements go, that comment was issued by the Trails Coordinator in the Engineering Division, and that will be something that we'll be recommending. The other just minor admin item that we had was we still haven't received a boundary survey, so we're going to want to see that before the item will be placed on subdivision committee agenda. So if you have submitted it, I apologize. I could not find it in the record. So if you just wanted to get that sent in, we would appreciate that. I believe that was really the only other big comments from planning. Again, thank you for adding a consideration for this trail connection here also between lot 17 and 18. I think that'll certainly help the block length and connectivity variances that are on the table. So that's all planning staff had. I believe we're planning on moving this one forward at this time. So with that, I will kick it over to the engineering division.
Yeah, good morning, Justin, Josh with engineering. Thank you guys for getting that work completed and acceptable for the flood study. That was the biggest holdup on this project the past couple times. So with that, we are recommending it move forward. We do still have a few comments as far as drafting goes on the plat, but other than that, not a whole lot of hesitation on our part. So recommending it move forward.
Thank you. Urban Forestry.
Yes, good morning. So Urban Forestry recommends this move forward also. There's some minor comments. The group 34 trees, which I think were mostly Bradford pears, do need to be included in the calculations as low priority. So make sure you include them because they still count as trees. They're still doing, besides being invasive, doing everything trees need to do. And then also, please just double check your low priority square footage. It seems a little high to me. Just make sure that the mid priority trees get placed into the high priority category, so don't have mid priority anymore. And low priority trees should only be those that are invasive or hazardous or diseased. And then let's see, other comments for landscape. Please place as many street trees as you can along the street, and mitigation trees along other areas of the site. Just might have to juggle things around or relabel a bit. And then the driveway width into the site for Rupel does not have to be included in that street length calculation for the street trees. So that might help out a bit. I was worried about crowding with some of those trees. They are to be placed 30 feet on center, but you can group 25% of them, so make sure you're not grouping any more than that. And then I wouldn't recommend grouping them closer than 20 feet apart. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Fire.
Fire has no comment on these and recommends to move forward.
Great, thank you very much. Any additional comments from solid waste?
No comments.
Any other city division wanting to issue comments on this? I don't see any franchise utilities online today. So with that, I'll send it over to the applicant. Do you have any questions for staff?
I think we're good. We got everything updated and get it back into you, and thank you for your time this morning.
All right, no problem. We'll see you at the next subdivision committee meeting. Just let us know if you have questions in the meantime.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have preliminary plat PPL 2022-06. This is a preliminary plat submitted by Craft and Tall for property located at 2390 South Dead Horse Mountain Road. The property is zoned RSF4, residential single-family 4 units per acre, and contains approximately 51.32 acres. The request is for the preliminary plat of 132 residential lots. Do I have an applicant present today?
Yes, Isaiah DeVos with Craft and Toll.
Good morning, Mr. DeVos. All right, let me get this one shared here. We'll go through it. Planning staff on this one didn't have too many comments either. It does sound, or that's an engineering
This is
comment.
the wrong
Oh,
project
that's
right
the wrong one. There we go. Here we are. Whew, you get that phone call right before this meeting and it just throws everything off. All right, let's see. What's up here? Planning staff's comments on this. I think a lot of our comments have been addressed from the previous round, so thank you for that. The one bigger thing I still wanted to just get some clarity on was on the street improvements on Dead Horse Mountain Road. There was some, there was a little bit of lack of clarity on the plans for the right-of-way that currently exists on Dead Horse Mountain.
Yeah, so the right of way was for the old, was that a collector section, which was wider than the new section. So it's already been dedicated.
Okay, so it was just a little unclear the way it was labeled. So just getting that shored up, and then I think our intention would be to have the sidewalk constructed at the back of the existing master street plan, or the master street plan line.
Okay.
So if it's over dedicated, that's fine, but just put the sidewalk where the master street plan would.
Okay, and there is an existing electrical line along
Okay.
Dead Horse.
Okay.
So would we be able to adjust the position of
Yeah,
that
let's
based
work
on
around that.
Okay.
But let's just have that shown so we know exactly where the best
Okay.
place for the sidewalk is, and then we
Okay.
may just want to make sure that there's a variance attached to it,
Okay.
so the planning commission can make that determination.
And is that a variance or a waiver for that?
It would be a variance,
Okay.
but it can run with the preliminary plat.
Okay.
So yeah, let's just get that accounted for then. I guess not all of the comments are showing up on this, so I don't know what's happening there. They should be populating on Energov. I think it could just be a technical glitch at the moment, but I think that was the big one that planning had. A couple comments also on Street 12, the street table. I think there was a question about why the sidewalk was moved to the back of curb rather than allocating for that green space. So
There are existing pine trees on that parcel right there that we are
trying to save.
trying to save.
Okay, then let's just get that accounted for as
Okay.
well.
Okay. I can
We're
add that to the
Yeah.
letter then.
let's get that accounted for in that variance request just to make sure. Anything that's atypical, we always just want to make sure is accounted for. Other than that, once planning, again, planning, those are the big ones for planning. Everything else looked pretty good to go. We got the other variance requests for the block length. And with that, I will kick it to the engineering division.
Good morning, Isaiah Schaff, Engineering. I had a few comments on the Plains and Grange report. I do want to, I'm just gonna read one of the comments, as it's stated on the cover sheet, whenever you get those up. If off-site easement is challenged in court, this is the off-site easement for that sewer line. If it's challenged in court, the plat cannot be modified to accommodate either a low-pressure sewer or an additional lift station. A low-pressure system will not be permitted. The addition of a new sewer lift station is very undesirable for the utility. That's the utility division, water and sewer, and only allow where no gravity sewer option exists, where the cost for gravity is well beyond that of the lift station. However, there's no concession given to the inability of a developer to obtain an easement. Offsite easements for needed infrastructure must be obtained by the developer. So just want to make that 100% clear that the city will not accept a low pressure sewer system or another lift station for this development. I know there's some back and forth between Tom and Kit and Corey and all the conversations prior to actual submittal. So just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that statement and where the utility division stands on it. As far as the rest of the plat, I have a few comments. For the taper that's coming in on Street 1, asking to shift it to the west of that intersection. So you neck down going into the intersection instead of after it. Some clarification as far as sidewalk location on that street 12 stub out going to the Dead Horse Mountain. I think that is because there's some power lines on that stretch of road as well. And then on the drainage report, I just had a few more clarifying questions. Looked like some of the areas we're going to the pond we're called to be bypassed, or we're going to the pond. So just a little bit more clarification needed, but we're comfortable moving this one forward.
Okay.
Thank you, Josh. Melissa Evans, Urban Forestry.
Yes, good morning, thank you. So one question I have is why the total site area changed on the tree preservation calculation chart. If you could just double check that.
Okay.
And make sure that the existing right-of-way and easements aren't included in that square footage, but proposed right-of-way and easements should be included.
Okay.
I didn't know if that was maybe the discrepancy. And then also, for mitigation, the low priority category is only for diseased or dying trees or invasive species, so double check that. And I still have concern about the pine trees along that entrance road that are, close to or on or next to the neighbor's property. I know it was stated on the comments that the grading had been adjusted, but I couldn't really tell if it has or what kind of impact those trees will have. So if you could please double check that and communicate with that neighbor if it is going to impact their trees. And then also please show the potential house footprints and driveway configurations on the lots. I know it may not be exact, it may change later, but I just want to make sure that the trees that are on the lots can truly be preserved. And if they can't, just want to be realistic about, trying to preserve them. And then also, if you could show the existing tree numbers from the tree inventory list on the plans, that would be really helpful, especially for trees to be removed or for the big significant trees. For the landscape plan, if you can double check the number of required detention trees and make sure the numbers match in the charts. I think they were a little off there, so just look at that. And please make sure that there will be enough room for the mitigation trees that are going to be planted on that clubhouse and pool lot. Just want to, again, maybe look at some potential footprints and make sure that it won't be too crowded or they won't be scrambling later to try to find a place for those trees.
Okay. And I don't think a clubhouse or pool will be constructed on that lot.
Okay.
So I don't think there'll be any issues with that then.
Okay, well, great. I thought I saw a label for that, but maybe that's changed. So, okay, that sounds good. And then please make sure that the mitigation trees are not doubling as required street trees. The only place I saw this might be happening is along the street across from pond number 2. And I was also curious as to why understory trees are being used as street trees in that area along the pond too. We require large shade canopy trees unless there's overhead power lines, so. Take another look at that, otherwise urban forestry recommends this project move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I was able to find the comments for some reason. It's a technical issue why it's not closed out, but we'll get that to you.
Okay.
Fire, did you have any comments on this one?
Good morning, this is Nathan with Fire. The only comments that I had was, I believe it's on Street 1, the fire hydrants that are in the lines that street there are gonna require to be 26 feet in front of them. Other than that, yeah, I think there's one maybe kind of behind one of your, traffic, control devices there. We just need to make sure we have 26 feet in front of them.
Okay.
But other than that, fire recommends moving forward.
All right, thank you. Solid waste.
Good morning. No comments from solid waste.
Thank you. Any other city divisions wanting to make comments on this today? All right, hearing none, I'll turn it over to the applicant. Do you have any questions?
No, I think everything's good.
Okay, so this will be getting moved forward, so we'll see this on a subdivision committee, just resubmit along with that submission deadline, and we'll see you then.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have LSD 2022-06. This is large-scale development submitted by Blue & Associates for properties located east of East Sain Street and North West Street. The properties are zoned RPZD and contain approximately 4.03 acres. The request is for a 331-unit apartment complex with associated parking, and do we have an applicant present today?
George Duquesne with Blue & Associates.
Good morning, Mr. Duquesne. Now I navigate back to your item here. 1 second.
It's one more to the right.
Thank you. Too small of a screen. All right, so we are moving this item forward. So thank you for getting it to that level. Planning staff, the big issues that we still have, we're just getting, it looks again like a lot of spilled ink, but it's not really. It's just kind of minute details on all of the elevations. I did not see that an elevation was submitted for Legacy 30A. We had a Legacy 30B in the elevation packet, but it wasn't, so just minor clarification there on what's on the site plan versus what's in the architectural elevations, just to make sure everything's all the same.
Okay.
Most of the comments were about potentially needing to alter the, floor, either the floor plans or the site plan to match each other. There were just like some minor differences in a couple cases. Some of the buildings were in line and some of them didn't seem to be quite in line. So again, the comments look like they're a lot, but I think they're things that could easily be worked out. So that was the big thing for planning. Again, the other things were just making sure that we get that right-of-way vacation and the easement vacation requests solidified as soon as you can. I think we'll keep moving this one forward, knowing that that's on the radar. But yeah, and then also just clarifying some of the labeling. We'd like to see just that where this purple line is. Right now it's just shown as a line. But if we could have it kind of dimensioned and labeled so we know exactly what that line is, I think, again.
Is the purple line mine?
No, the purple line is highlighting a line that was on the plan.
Oh, okay.
So just making sure that it's labeled and dimensioned clearly so we know what that easement is.
Okay.
Will just help some clarity things. So again, the things that we were commenting on were clarity issues, so we definitely felt comfortable moving this one forward from our perspective. Parking numbers looked good, everything else looked like it was in line. So thank you for that, and with that, I'll move it over to the engineering division.
Good morning, George.
Hey, Josh.
We are moving this one forward this time. Still have some reservations as far as the flood study not being provided with that variance request. Even though you're asking for a variance to provide a flood study, I don't think we're going to be able to recommend support of that subdivision committee, so you're aware of that.
Okay.
Looking for a revised traffic study or updated traffic study based on unit count, not needing to adjust distributions or anything like that, just that updated unit count on there.
The traffic study, do we need that by subdivision committee?
Yeah, it's been a comment for the past,
It has, they've just been working on it. Peters and Associates, I guess Ernie had a stroke, so it's just Randy doing the traffic studies, so he's backed up.
yeah, so that's gonna kind of back into, that street improvements recommendation. So I put together a memo as far as the bridge assessment goes, based on the whole traffic study and doing some updated, just changing the unit count. But if y'all are okay with that, that's fine. But looking at getting those revised numbers, just to double check that from Peters.
Awesome.
And then as far as the drainage report goes, I took a look at that, cursory look, the Heck HMS model looked good, and I think I'm in agreement with what you show as far as peak flows with detention and without detention. So that was okay. And then as far as plans go, one of the biggest things was that 2-to-1 slope on the south side of the property. Still waiting for the geotech analysis on that.
I'll reach out.
And then wanted to point out that structure that's right at the bottom, or those structures that are right at the bottom of those hills have a lot of water flowing to them. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that and that there's enough measures in place to make sure that they don't get flooded. I
Understood.
think that was the majority of it, so if you have any questions, feel free to.
The inlet stuff for crossing Saint Street, you guys wanted some details on that, but I didn't know how to do it, included in the drainage report. I'm guessing that's still a comment. I may have to just get with you to see exactly what you're looking for. I know you asked for a written explanation of everything, but it's hard to write up complete explanations on every component on there. So I'll just have to get with you on that part of it. I don't know if that was still a comment or not.
Yeah, but we can, that's not gonna be something that's gonna hold you up on this track. We can either take care of it now or do it during grading permit.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Urban forestry.
Yes, good morning, George.
Hey, Melissa.
For tree preservation comments, so the parkland dedication and tree preservation easements need to be separated, and that information may need to be recalculated. And I saw Parks comments from Zach Foster on that and that trail location. So just make those adjustments as necessary. And tree preservation easements do need to be dedicated since this project is a large-scale development. They must be separate from parkland dedication, of course. Thank you for providing the clear tree inventory maps with the numbers shown on the plans. That really helps a lot. We appreciate that. I know it was extra for you to do, but there's so much going on out here. It really helps.
Sure.
And then if there's a way to possibly show the locations of the significant trees on the tree preservation and landscape plans, that would help also. I think there's like 5 of them, 4 or 5.
Okay.
Those really big trees, if you could just make a darker circle around them, or I don't know, something to highlight them, that would help. But back to that area with the trail and going to that long skinny piece of property. So Matt Mahalovich gave me some language that could go on the signature or the plat for the signature block that would allow for adjustments in that trail location, because I know that's going to be built in the future and there's some grading issues out there, so it may need adjustment. Another way to do it besides that is, I think you have like 39.6% tree preservation right now. So you could possibly just leave that long skinny part where the trail is out of the easements. It could be tree preservation area, but not as a dedicated easement. And I think if you did that, you'd still be at 30%. You're still above your 25% requirement.
To be perfectly honest, I thought we had,
Sorry?
to be perfectly honest, I thought we had already done that. But I'll go back and check, but I made it very clear with Lee that that's what we were gonna do, is that trail, we had to leave that part of it out of the tree preservation easements.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you had or not, so yeah, if you could just clarify, and shoot me an email or note it on the plan or something.
Sure.
You know, if it's not to be dedicated as an easement, call it a tree preservation area.
Okay.
If it's going to be easement, you know, call it an easement. And we need as much of it, of that 25% to be dedicated as easements as possible. But I just thought maybe that's the best way to handle that trail section, so there's not, you know, trouble later with having to go to city council or make adjustments or whatever.
Sure.
And then also I wasn't sure if there's a detention pond on site. I think
There's-
towards that southern end, it looks like there is. So just make sure you provide the tree and shrub plantings for it.
There's no detention pond, that's just a low area to capture water.
Okay, great. And then just double check the mitigation tree counts and the landscape legends. And that's it. Everything else looked good. Urban Forestry recommends to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next we've got solid waste, or excuse me, fire.
Fire has no comment.
Solid waste.
Yeah, good morning. I don't have any further comments.
All right. I think that's everybody. So with that, I'll turn it over to the applicant. Do you have questions for staff at this time?
No, I think I've got most of everything, so what would hold me up from being able to get to subdivision committee at this point? Sounds like the traffic study.
We're new to the traffic study. From planning's side, just make sure all the buildings, labels, footprints, and line up with the elevations that are provided.
Okay.
And then just start working on the vacation right of way and easement requests don't necessarily have to be in, but keep moving on that. I don't think there's anything else that would necessarily hold you up from being on the subdivision committee agenda.
Okay.
Since there are various requests going forward, it won't be eliminated in the subdivision committee. You'll have to go to the commission.
That's fine. Okay.
Any other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have LSD 2022-021. This is a large-scale development submitted by Community by Design for property located at 1629 North Crossover Road. The property is zoned RSF4, residential single-family 4 units per acre, and contains approximately 1.93 acres. The request is for a development of a cluster housing development containing 15 new single-family residential units. And do we have an applicant present on this item? Let's see, we have a phone call. Ending in 775. You can just state your name for the record, please.
Good morning, Ryan T. here.
Good morning, Mr. T. Ryan Umberger's the planner on this one, so if you would.
Sure, thank you. Good morning, Brian. So this project has been reviewed. We are recommending that it be forwarded from the planning side of things, though I think there are some other outstanding issues to address. Just kind of wanted to reiterate, I saw your comment response letter, that was really helpful. So a lot of these, in fact, I think all of these comments are just repeat comments of things that you indicated would be addressed with forthcoming submittals. So I'll just touch on the issues again that we noticed would need variances. So the first one would just be the dwellings facing the, being oriented to either a public street or the common open green space. That is a requirement. A minimum of 75% of those dwellings must be oriented around either of those, and you had indicated and staff has recognized that the configuration of this lot as it currently exists would need a planning commission variance from that requirement. Wanted to acknowledge also that a planning commission variance would be needed for the excess width on the drive aisles. Just that any one-way access should be 12 feet and two-way access should be 24 feet. And so yeah, as indicated on your comment response, we'll just need a letter for that. And then asking to dimension the curb radii, we've got the effective turn radius for the entrance along crossover, and we need that effective curb radii. And that should be 20 feet on a regional link street. If it's less than that, it would need a planning commission variance. And then maybe the last thing is just to indicate any existing streetlights along crossover. I noticed in your comment response, you had mentioned kind of the internal streetlights. I think what is a particular concern is for us is just being able to see them on the public street. So those are just kind of the high points. All the other comments I think are ones that you're familiar with and indicated that you'd be addressing with forthcoming submittals. So if you could just provide that variance request letter ahead of subdivision committee, then I think that's really the most significant outstanding items for planning.
Thank you, Ryan. Engineering.
Good morning, Brian. We are tabling this one, mainly due to the fact of that permeable pavement, within the utility easement. I noticed I was looking at the shading on the last plan and then dove into it more on this one, and you're still calling it permeable, pavement, and counting it as, permeable surface in the drainage report. While you can do that, you can install the permeable pavement. As far as drainage calculations, it'll need to be considered impervious, just because it's in a utility easement, has a really, I guess a large likelihood of being disturbed and not put back as a permeable surface. So that's the biggest reason we're tabling this project. Just unsure if the drainage is going to be able to work with that area classified as an impervious area. I did get with utilities on just some initial feedback as far as the outside easement widths on those water and sewer lines throughout the project, and then on the northwest corner. Initially, they don't have any hesitation on that and seem to be okay with that reduced easement width.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm sorry. I did have some questions on the drainage, for you. If I can wait till the end if we procedurally rather do it that way.
Sure, we can wait to the end, just let the other reviewers give their comments in. Urban forestry.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Brian. So I don't have a lot of comments. For tree preservation, just make sure you're showing root pruning where needed and location of, construction entrance, concrete washouts, soil types, those kinds of things. And for the landscape comments, just, make sure this plan will have to be stamped by a landscape architect since it's an LSD. And then if you can show a detail for those trees, the mitigation trees that are planted in the paved areas, that would be good. I think you have one that you've used with structural soil in those areas. So if you can include that, please. And then also if you could designate the mitigation trees with an M on the plan, and then the lot trees with an L, that would be helpful too. And just make sure that there are 80 mitigation trees proposed on the plan. I counted 76, but again, I might have miscounted. And that's all I have. Urban Forestry recommends to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Fire, did you have any comments on this one?
No, Fire has no comments, recommends to move forward.
Great. Solid waste?
No comments from solid waste.
All right, Mr. Teague, if you have questions for staff?
Yes, I did have a couple of questions. One question for Melissa, actually. I don't think I was showing all of the mitigation trees. There's a little note on the plan, there may be, I can't see it, but 10 or 15 mitigation trees we weren't showing. I think
Okay.
you said we required 80, and the question was, is there an option to provide those mitigation trees off-site or money in lieu or something like that? I just wasn't sure.
Okay, yeah, I thought you had like 76 mitigation trees on site from what I was counting, but again, if you could, designate, which for which, yeah, that would be great. And then, yeah, if you can't fit them all on site, we can talk about it, there are some options. I don't know if this property owner has another piece of property, that they can plant those trees on. That's an option. Tree escrow is an option. It's the last option. We don't like to use it if we can avoid it because, we want trees in the ground as soon as possible. But see what you can do. Double check those counts and just, stay in touch with me about which way you might go if there's other property where these can be planted.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I guess maybe three questions for Josh. I think the biggest thing is the permeable pavement inside the utility easements. With these plans, I mean, we want to try to provide as much permeable ground or as possible. There is some precedent. The reason we've shown it this way with our Little Bend cluster development last fall. We took them to the planning commission this way. We had permeable pavement in the utility easements, and it wasn't necessarily, I think, permeable and getting credit for it. There's two layers to that. There's whether or not it's counted as impervious or pervious. And then second, are we treating it with a water quality feature and reducing our runoff coefficient? On this plan, we're counting that pavement inside the utility easement as being permeable, but we are treating it, but we're not treating it with another water quality feature, but we're not reducing the runoff coefficient like we would if it was not in a utility easement. We took the Little Bend cluster developments to planning commission that way. We did the same with the 1835 mission cluster development. Just generally, I mean, I think there's precedent for doing it this way. I would ask the question on all of this if there is flexibility from the engineering department doing it this way. Moving forward, I can likely go to the drainage report and change that to be impervious surface and make the drainage numbers work that way so that we're meeting the requirements of the drainage criteria manual. However, if we're putting in permeable pavement, I mean, we want to get some credit for it. Otherwise, it comes off as just a requirement, or otherwise it feels like we're just being encouraged to put down normal pavement that is impervious, and hope there would be some flexibility there. On that note, Josh, maybe the under drains would not be necessary in some of these locations. Could you talk about that a little bit for me, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so I can jump on the first I guess, questions you had as far as, allowing the project to move forward at this stage. That's not something that we're comfortable doing. Looking at the amount of impervious area, about roughly 12,000 square feet of impervious area that would be considered in those utility easements. And so, just for background, looking at how we're viewing the project, we're looking at in perpetuity. So as it goes in right now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, it's very unlikely that specifically that area in the utility easement will be maintained as permeable pavement. That's why in the past we haven't permitted it, knowing at the forefront of the project will have been a little different since the utilities were installed, and then afterwards he came in and proposed that the cluster development, same thing with that mission development. This one is it's basically a greenfield development, so utilities aren't existing. That's kind of one of the biggest reasons we have on that. And then, as far as under drains and utility easements, that's been a pretty standard comment for as long as I've been with the city, as far as not allowing private drainage and public utility easements. Hopefully that answered the question, but if not, feel free to.
The under drains, I mean, they're not necessarily always required with the permeable pavement. I typically show them just because I think it would function better, but is that right? I mean, they're not necessarily always required.
That's correct. Yeah, you have to meet those infiltration requirements.
Okay. Last question. We did have a little bit of detention shown in the northeast corner in the utility easement. I think what I'm gathering is that wouldn't be allowed either in a public utility easement.
Can you describe where exactly that is on the plan? Is it that the extreme northeast corner?
No, it's underneath we had that under drain leading to some underground, a little bit of underground detention right at the driveway entrance at the right of way line.
I must have missed that on the review.
Okay. I think maybe your comment was pointing to the under drain, but there is a little bit of detention there.
Typically, we want to avoid any sort of drainage feature, underground drainage feature in utility easements. So I would, can you get that in between lot 4 and 5?
Yeah, but that's what I was thinking. I could try and see if it would work if we put that there. We would miss some of the drainage basins, but I can take a look at that. I sure can. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that answers my questions. We hope that there was some flexibility in the engineering department with the permeable pavement inside the utility easement. I understand the concern. I also think that it's unlikely that it would all become impervious, and way into the future. And so I don't know, maybe there's a middle ground there if there has to be. But I will look at this and see if we can find a way to make the plan work, considering it to be all impervious. I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, the item's getting tabled, so we'll see this again at Tech Plat. Do you have any other questions about process there?
I don't.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for your time today. Next up, we have LSD 2022-022. This is a large-scale development submitted by Engineering Services, Inc. for property located at 2801 West McMillan Drive. The property is zoned P1 institutional and contains approximately 12.13 acres. The request is for a 15,100 square foot addition on the west side of the existing building, and Ryan Umberger is the planner on this one. Do we have an applicant present? You're available online, if you could just please raise your hand. There we go. All right, we have a Mr. Murray. If you could just state your name for the record, please.
Hey, it's Blake Murray with Engineering Services.
Great, thank you very much. Ryan, if you would take it away.
Sure. Good morning, Blake. From the planning side of things, we don't have a lot of comments. I did leave a comment and then realized after the fact that the dimensions were provided. I asked for dimensions for parking stall width and internal drive aisles. I noticed that it was just on a different sheet, so you can go ahead and ignore that comment. I think other than that, everything else looked clean from the planning side, and we were okay with this one moving forward to subdivision committee.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Engineering.
Good morning, Blake. I think our main comment on here was the location of that water quality swale. So it's shown in basin 2. Your report, as far as the drainage goes, showed an increase in one of the basins where the actual addition is going. So we just need to get that water quality swale relocated to the right basin.
Even though they both drain in the same spot?
Yeah, you got 2 study points and water's leaving the site at those 2 locations.
Alright, okay. I'll look that over and I might reach out after this so we can talk through.
Alright.
All right, thank you. Urban Forestry.
No comments, no existing trees are being affected. You do have some tree preservation fence in areas close to the construction, that's appreciated. But no mitigation required and no new plantings required since this is simple building addition. So Urban Forestry recommends move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fire.
Fire has no comments.
All right. Solid Waste.
No comments from always.
Great, thank you. I'll turn it over to the applicant. Do you have questions for staff? Sounds like this one's, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I don't have any real questions. My opinion, Josh probably talking a little bit offline about the drainage. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Let us know if you have any questions. I apologize, I think this one is getting forwarded, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, I couldn't remember what engineering said. All right, appreciate your time today. We'll let us know if you have any questions in the meantime.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, that clears us out of old business and brings us to new business. Our first item up is LSP 2022-034. This is a lot split submitted by Blue and Associates for property located at 4600 East Huntsville Road. The property is zoned RA, residential agricultural, and is in the Fayetteville planning area. It contains approximately 8.9 acres. The request is to split the property into 2 lots with 1.98 and 1.56 acres. Looks like we have somebody who's raised their hand. If you could just state your name for the record, please.
Good morning, this is Nathan Crouch with Blue & Associates.
Great, thank you, Mr. Crouch. Ms. Harrison, if you would, please.
Jesse, good morning, Nathan. So planning is comfortable moving this project forward, though we did have a few comments to issue on it. It looked like the lot split was submitted about 5 years ago, and then it never was approved or recorded due to a water extension that was required, and I think some other issues that came up then. The comments that planning had to issue on this today, track 2, the southern tract that's in city limits, it looks like it doesn't have the lot, it's not meeting the lot area minimum for the zoning that's there, RA. So there are kind of three options that you have there. You could either adjust the land area between those two tracts so that they're both meeting the underlying zoning requirements, or rezone the property on the southern half to a district that would allow for smaller lot sizes, or pursuing a Board of Adjustment variance to vary from those lot area minimums. Also just asked for some verification on the width of the setback on the other tract, and then have some drafting comments to issue. It also looked like some right-of-way dedication might be required along Huntsville Road to the south, since it is a regional link street, which typically requires 40 or 96 total feet of right-of-way and 46 from center line. But those are really the only comments that I had to issue on it. I believe Washington County was looped into the Tech Plat review, so if they had any concerns, those should be issued. And I know Franchise Utilities did ask for a 30-foot utility easement along their overhead power lines on that northern tract. But otherwise, again, it's good to move forward from us.
Great, thank you. And engineering. I think Dave Rowden on this one.
Yeah, I am. Took me a minute to get the thing turned on.
No problem.
Okay, first comment I had was I need you to verify that the address of the tract one is really 1218 South Keene Lane. Because it doesn't look like it is anymore. And the second one is I want you to verify the dimensions of tract 1 and 2. You're showing it to be a straight line over there on the west side. And if you look at the arc map, it is not a straight line. And number 3, verify the location of the sewer main, because what we're showing on the arc map is as close as you've got it, or it's a lot closer actually than you've got it to that property line. And the final thing is show the water and sewer service lines.
Great, thank you. With that, I'll turn it over to the applicant. Do you have any questions for staff?
Not at this time, thank you very much.
Sounds like the item's getting forwarded, so we'll just, once you resubmit, it'll be an administrative process after that.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right, next up we have LSP 2022-037. We have a lot split submitted by L and F Construction for property located at 2589 North Broderick Street. The property is in the Fayetteville planning area and contains approximately 0.61 acres. The request is to create 2 residential lots. Do we have an applicant present on this one? Looks like Mr. Crouch. If you could state your name for the record, please.
Thank you, Nathan Crouch, Flynn Associates.
Great, Ms. Harrison, if you would.
Thanks, Jesse. So planning is also comfortable moving this lot split forward. I mostly had drafting comments to issue on it, though I did have a question about the septic report that was provided. It looked like it was for the original subdivision, which only factored in 12 lots, and since another lot is being created with this split, just wanted some confirmation that the septic system can handle the additional load of having that extra lot in the subdivision. Also, it looked like you noted in the cover letter that a conditional use permit was applied for having a lot less than an acre in the county, so thank you for noting that. It also looked like an additional foot of right-of-way will need to be dedicated along the western street to meet our kind of minimum standards for a residential link in the county. And also just had some minor comments about updating signature blocks and removing the old building setbacks on the survey. But other than that, it should be good to move forward.
Thank you.
And engineering, did you have comments on this one?
I have it approved as submitted.
All right, easy enough from you all. Mr. Crouch, do you have comments or questions for staff?
We're good to go. We'll just take those comments and receive them and get those addressed. Be good to go. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Next up, we have PPL 2022-07. This is a preliminary plat submitted by Olson Engineering for property located at 3788 North Gregg Avenue. The property is zoned UT Urban Thoroughfare and contains approximately 17.32 acres. The request is to subdivide the property into 8 lots, and do we have an applicant present today?
Yes, Rusty Cohen with Olson.
Great, thank you. Mr. Umberger, if you would.
Good morning, Rusty.
Good morning.
So we had just a few comments wanted to bring to your attention, some things that you and I had talked about previously that I'll just reiterate. So first, lots 21B and 21D don't have frontage on a public street. Based on the zoning requirements, that basically just limits those lots from being developed with single-family residences. So if you could add a note on there that just says that the use limitations that will apply to those two lots, that will resolve that comment.
On the plan itself?
Yeah, and just adding it as a note is fine. We did have a question about the adjacent lots. So I saw that you had provided information on the lot owners, but these numbers, I wasn't able to find where those corresponded. So if you would add just a number on the adjacent lots so that we can tie that information to those lots, that will help us confirm that adjacent ownership and zoning. Did have a question about the legal descriptions. GIS really had the most significant comments. I think mine are probably just because I'm a layman when it comes to reading those, and I was just looking for a little bit of clarification on the overall site area. Based on the vicinity map, it looks like lot 20A is not represented on that plat, despite it having a lot line dissolved. And so I was just looking for confirmation with the legal descriptions and then on the vicinity map that we do have a specific, that this acreage is.
Yeah, I think initially that overall lot is 3 separate lots, and we weren't under contract on that northern lot yet, but we are now, so we will make sure that that's included.
Okay, thank you. Then I guess just coming back to the plat itself, we're looking for dimensions of the existing and proposed right-of-way if you are proposing to dedicate any right-of-way, and that should be measured from the center line of the existing road. If you would just include a label on each of those roads with their master street plan designation, that would.
Okay, yeah, that road running through the middle was just a private drive access easement.
Yeah, and so I think what we're looking for is just a dimension coming off of like Gregg from center line and then Van Ash from center line. I think you've got maybe the width of the road marked here, but yeah, if you could just show that dimension on there to the front property line, that will help us confirm basically if any right of way does need to be dedicated. And then we're just asking that you show the existing sidewalk on the site plans. Yeah, basically, again, just looking at our street improvements, and I think it's likely that we would be requesting a master street plan performance bond with this one, but just showing where that sidewalk is laid out on the plat would be helpful. And then I think the last thing that you and I got to speak with yesterday that just wanted to address here is that we did receive your variance requests.
Yep.
So that item is scheduled for the July 25th, I believe, Planning Commission meeting. And basically we can just work with you assuming it's your preference. I know there's some other outstanding comments from the other reviewers, but we can work with you basically to get that item on the applicable Planning Commission hearing. And that's really it for planning.
Thank you. Sounds like it's getting
Forwarded by planning, yeah.
Engineering?
Good morning, Rusty. This is Josh, engineering. We are tabling the project for drainage. So there's a known public flooding issue downstream of this property based on the revised stormwater ordinance last year. Any new developments will have to meet current standards. So that's the biggest reason on this one we're tabling it. We did find a lower F through this property, so just outlining the actual legal description that removed it from the floodplain. And then the other major comment we had on this one was the sewer lines will have to be public, have to be installed for our specifications, since there's lots being created, that, otherwise wouldn't have access to public sewer. Those are the majority of our comments.
Thank you. Josh, Urban Forestry.
Yes, good morning. Urban Forestry is tabling this project also, for the lack of a tree preservation plan and landscape plan. I do appreciate the landscape narrative you provided, it was helpful, but we do need to see, those plans to see, tree preservation fence up, which trees will be preserved. I think you're preserving most all of them, but we also need to see if any will be removed. And then it's understood that as each lot develops, they'll come through, development review on their own, and landscape plans will be provided for those. But you still may need to plant some street trees along Van Ness and Gregg at this point. So just take a step back and try to get those included in the set, and please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Urban Forestry. Fire, any comments on this one?
Yeah, Fire had a few comments as far as, kind of the layout. I don't know if it's something that would be more in line with like the LSC when it comes to later. Just questions in regards to FECs and dead end drives. That's the only comments Fire had.
Okay, thank you. Solid waste.
Yeah, good morning. I think my comments might come in later, but just how the trash will be managed and locations of the enclosures and dimensions.
All right, sounds good. Anybody else want to make comments on this one? Okay, hearing none, I'll turn it over to the applicant. Do you have questions for staff?
Yeah, just a couple on the urban forestry. If there were trees required, again, I think there's not any trees on this lot. There's a few in the right of way over on Gregg. Is there a way to defer those until those large scale developments come in on each lot?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute and couldn't do it. So I think, if it's clear and obvious that those trees might be in the way of driveways or utility work that would have to happen in that area or grading, I'll consider it. But, like it looks like on Van Ash, they could be between the sidewalk and street curb and probably be just fine. And then, not sure, not knowing the timing of all these lots to come through. I don't know, I'd rather get them planted and growing, and maybe some have to be moved or adjusted later than not.
Okay.
But just look at that and see, and feel free to call me or email me, and we can discuss it more. I'm sorry, I don't have a more clear answer at this moment, but.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say we showed, I think there were 3 trees that were having to be removed in the right of way on Gregg with those drives coming in. Okay, and I guess on fire and solid waste, yeah, those comments will be shown when we go in for the large scale development. This current set was really just for the access, water, sewer, and kind of creating those lots.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
No, I guess I'll follow up with Josh. I think I just saw the comments come through on that drainage. Josh, you said there was some known flooding. Can you indicate what area that's at?
Yeah, it's direct north of this property, along the creek, when it floods.
Down in the floodway area to the north there in the bike trail?
Yeah, so it's, over the past couple of years, the trail bridge is washed out, had flooding issues on Gregg, we've had to close the street down. Coach just specifies flooding issues and not necessarily, where they're located, just the downstream aspect of it.
So, again, I think from that old business park drainage study, I thought this property was included in that. I guess, are you requiring detention on site, or?
Yeah, so the way code reads, I clipped it into, either the drainage report, on this mill or not. That section, talking about when it's not required. Overall, if a development is a part of, an overall commercial subdivision with a planned drainage report, it's not required unless there's no public flooding downstream of the development. It references current practices and standards, and so that's kind of what this development will be held to as far as drainage manual, those 4 minimum standards.
Okay, so again, due to the size of that basin out there, is there a possibility that you would want to get that water in and out before the rest of it gets to that point, or can we provide you with a no rise, or?
So not do detention or meet water quality or anything like that?
Well, yeah, again, I was just basing that off of the business park drainage study where, again, that parcel was included.
Yeah, so as far as that goes, the code's pretty clear, even if it's included in an overall drainage report that's been approved in the past. If there's no public flooding, then new developments can be required to meet current standards. This whole area basically was get it to the creek and send it down the creek as quickly as possible, and that's why there's not any detention in the entire CMN business park.
Okay, can you say that again?
Yeah, so right now this development will have to meet the minimum standards outlined in the drainage manual.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. Sounds like this one is getting tabled, so we'll see it one more time here at Tech Plat.
Okay.
Let us know if you have any further questions. And that brings us to our last item on the agenda today is LSD 2022-023. This is a large-scale development submitted by Craft & Tall for property located South Duncan Avenue and West 15th Street. Property zoned RMF 24, residential multifamily, 24 units per acre, and contains approximately 3.16 acres. The request is for a 40-unit cluster housing development. Do we have an applicant present today?
Yes, Isaiah DeVos with Craft & Toll.
Great, thank you, Mr. DeVos. Ms. Harrison, if you would, please.
Thanks, Jesse. Good morning, Isaiah. So planning is recommending that this item be tabled today at Tech Plat. I have a couple questions that I just want answers to before it gets forwarded to subdivision committee, primarily about the common open space, parking, and the architectural design requirements and how those are all being met. So just to kind of dive into the comments that I did issue on it, first and foremost, with the zoning that's there, I think it's RMF 24, there is a build to zone, and so there's that minimum buildable street frontage requirement, but we do allow exceptions since there is an access easement along the property's frontage and those driveways leading to the cluster development, but that will need a formal determination from Jesse just to verify that can be exempt and you won't need to meet that requirement. Also, setbacks for the development should only be shown for the overall lot and not for each individual cluster unit lot. So just make sure that's shown kind of, I provided a red line showing roughly where those should be. And then in terms of the cluster housing requirements, I know we talked about the maximum allowance and how you could kind of exceed that if you're providing at least 20% more common open space than what was required. But I think there's some confusion on, I guess, how big the units are right now and how much open space is needed. So just looking for some more clarity there. If the units are above 1,500 square feet and less than 2,000, it requires 500 square feet of common open space per unit. So I think the total requirement is probably twice what's being provided right now. I think 24,000 square feet is what's needed.
Okay, those units are all under 1,500. So that was noted on the cover sheet with the open space
calculations.
I saw the table there that you provided, but I noticed on the plans, it looked like the
Okay,
units were shown as like 16,000. So if you could just clarify what they are on there now. That might be the lot size, I'm not sure.
Yeah, those are the lot sizes.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay, thank you. So in that case, you're probably meeting that requirement and won't need to make any revisions there. But another thing worth mentioning that I know we talked about in the pre-app was building orientation and whether you could meet that with the private drives. It sounds like we won't be able to allow that. To meet that 75%, we'll need to either be facing Duncan Avenue or the shared common open space, or you can seek a planning commission variance if you aren't able to provide enough units facing those two areas. And also, just to confirm building orientation, if you could provide some more detail on the plan showing kind of how these units will be facing. The front should be towards the open space and not the street or alley. So just some more detail there would be appreciated. Also, just asked for some clarity on how parking was being provided. I might have overlooked a table about that in here, but you do have two options in cluster developments. You can provide one per bedroom or two per unit. I think it's 1.5 if you're under that 15,000 square feet. But just asked for some information there. It looked like there weren't garages on the unit, so I wondered where the driveways were.
yeah, and there would be 2-car driveways.
Okay.
So,
Okay. If you could just show those
Okay.
on the plan, that'd be helpful. And then make sure that you are showing the pedestrian circulation system that's needed to connect the units to the open space and Duncan Avenue. We are also requesting that the sidewalk be completed along the property's Duncan Avenue frontage. I think there was some built with these units here, so just asking to connect.
so along Duncan on parcels not being included in this.
No, just the parcel included in this. So I think it had frontage here and here,
Okay.
and that would only be where it would be needed.
Okay.
Also, there are architectural design requirements associated with the cluster housing ordinance, and for multi-family dwellings, they are also subject to the urban residential design standards. So there does need to be some variation throughout the development, so just ask for individual elevations for each building. And then just had some drafting comments to issue as well, asked for the right-of-way to be dimensioned from the center line of the road. I think it is a residential link, so if there is more than 26 feet of right-of-way there, you won't need to dedicate any more. I think those were most of my requirements, really just looking for that confirmation that the cluster housing ordinance is being met, and that you submit any variance request as needed. But if you have any questions, definitely let me know. Otherwise, I am recommending that it be tabled today.
Okay, so as the driveways and open space are already met, is it still being tabled then? Just with the architectural standards?
It is, yes, because we
Okay.
need elevation for every unit.
Okay.
There's, I think, 40, so.
Engineering.
Yeah, good morning again. We didn't have very many comments on this, development as far as, utilities and drainage goes. Needed some clarification, on the utility plan. There's that water extension, that was submitted a while ago that the city has never accepted. Either we need to wrap that up or it needs to be shown as proposed.
Okay.
And then for, if I remember correctly, these are gonna be private streets.
Yes.
So we'll need easement on both sides of that water line. Typically, if it was right of way, we wouldn't need that easement, or both sides of the utility lines. So those have to be, surrounded by those easements. On, the pond, asking to show that 20-foot setback from the 100-year water surface elevation. I think that comment was on those. Yeah, there we go. So showing that, setback on site plan, and then, adding that, call out for a commercial driveway, for that entrance, that north entrance. I think that's the bulk of our comments.
Thank you. Urban forestry.
Yes, good morning again, Isaiah. So I don't have a lot of comments. For the tree preservation plan, please make sure that you're providing, tree preservation easements, since this is a large-scale development project. And they should, be as many of the trees as you're preserving as possible. So make sure you show those, and also show root pruning limits where necessary. I think there's just one tree next to that house footprint that maybe needs some root pruning along that side of the house. And then also, make sure you're giving them adequate construction room, at the back of that house, 5 or 10 feet. I guess minimum of 5. I don't know. Just check and make sure that tree can really be preserved, I guess. And then also on the landscape plan, if you could please provide street trees at 1 per 30 linear feet along the sort of common areas along the street, mainly that northern areas is where I was seeing that along the northern property line. And then also, please specify another type of elm tree, as lace bark elm may be invasive. And then if you could specify an alternate to that shortleaf pine, I'd like for you to keep shortleaf pine on the list. It's a good tree, and we want to make the demand known, but I think they're having trouble getting them in nurseries right now, so maybe just specify another one just in case. And that's all I have. I recommend, or urban forestry recommends move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Fire, did you have any comments on this one today?
Yeah, I only had 2 comments on it. The fire hydrants to the north, we'll need to make sure we have 26 feet clear in front of that hydrant on the street. And then also with the 20-foot streets, they're gonna have to be marked on both sides as no parking fire lane.
Okay.
All right, solid waste.
Good morning. This will be serviced by a residential recycling and trash on curbside, so no further comments on that.
All right, any other city divisions wanting to make comments? I'll turn it over to the applicant. Do you have any questions for staff?
Yes, question for building orientation along that west. The intent is to have them face that street, like just right there. And then you had mentioned that they would need to face Duncan as well. Is that?
They don't have to face Duncan,
Okay.
but go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, would they not already be facing Duncan as is with that too?
I wouldn't think so because there's that private drive between
Okay.
those and Duncan.
So that just need to be requested as a variance just to meet the intent of the code then?
It could.
Okay.
Any further questions for staff?
No.
All right, hearing none. If you need to revisit on any of the cluster housing requirements, I'm sure planning staff will have to sit down with you to do that as well. All right, hearing that, since it is being tabled, we'll see this one at another tech plat. And with that, if there are no further questions, thank you very much for your time.
Great, thank you.
That was the last item on our tech plat agenda, so thank you everybody for your time today, and with that, we can go ahead and adjourn the meeting.